What is the most terrifying thing you've ever experienced while home alone? I moved into our house a month before my husband did, and I was painting our guest room with the windows wide open. I was busy painting, listening to music when I realized it had gotten dark outside. I heard the leaves crunching outside but didn't think anything of it because we have a lot of neighbors who walk their dogs. When I went to close the windows, I saw a man standing in my backyard under the tree maybe 5 feet from our back door staring up at me. I fell to the floor and realized the back glass door was probably open and nothing but the screen, which he could have easily just walked into my house. Crawled to my phone and called my husband, who then called 911 while rushing home to me. We have a 6-foot-tall fence around our yard. This person hopped it to watch me. I couldn't sleep right at night for months. A couple years back, I woke up at 3 a.m. to see someone walk past my bedroom door. I called out in my just woken up, not thinking haze, thinking maybe my boyfriend had come over while I was sleeping, but got no response, so I knew it wasn't him. Got out of bed, stupidly forgetting to take my phone or any kind of defensive item with me, and went into the front room where the light was on, only to be met with a random guy staring at one of the walls. I asked him who he was and got no answer. At this point, I'd actually woken up enough to realize I could really be in trouble, so ran back to the bedroom, grabbed my phone and ran outside on the phone to the police, who showed up within a few minutes. Turns out the guy was mentally ill, and to this day neither myself or the police know how he got in. I was babysitting a kid who had a video monitor, and was told that she wouldn't wake up while the parents were out, and if she did, to call them right away. I was watching TV with the monitor set off to the side to keep an eye on her, and right around 11, the camera's view shifted a few inches. It then began to slightly jiggle like someone was messing with it. I was squinting at it, trying to decide what I was actually seeing, and I kid you not, the whole screen burst to static for a few seconds, and the kid started wailing. She stood up and was screaming in her crib just like one of the kids from The Sims. When she didn't fall back asleep after a few minutes, I called Mom and she said, "Okay, we're on our way home anyway. We think she has nightmares, sometimes it's fine. Never again will I babysit." I was about 21 or 22 and living by myself at the time, and I left my window open on a pleasant night. It was low enough to the ground that you could get in if you really tried, but the screen wasn't easy to take off, and I lived in a fairly safe neighborhood, so I didn't even think twice about it. Woke up in the middle of the night because I smelled smoke, and I reached out to turn on my lamp, and my hand hit what was very obviously a person. My brain fully woke up at that point, and I realized there was a shirtless man in my bedroom, smoking a cigarette and staring at me. I remember yelling for him to get out, and I must have spooked him just as badly as he spooked me, because he leapt out my window and took off. I slammed it shut and moved a bookcase in front of it, and when I went out the next morning in the daylight, I found the screen sitting against the house. Didn't sleep the rest of the night, and I haven't slept with a window more than cracked ever since. I also absolutely refused to live on the ground floor of a building. I don't know if he was planning to rob me or rape me, but it was absolutely terrifying and makes me wonder how many times it happened and I didn't wake up. Not exactly alone, but I was home with my newborn son and someone knocked on the front door. I was expecting my mother, but she usually comes in through the garage. I thought it was strange, but yelled, "Come in." Because why wouldn't I? Then this cracked out old woman comes stumbling through the door and asks me for a ride to the nearest gas station. I told her I didn't have a car seat for my son, so I couldn't go anywhere. So she starts screaming, "That's just inappropriate," and doesn't stop even when I'm telling her she needs to leave or I'll call the cops. After a minute or so, my mother actually pulls in the driveway. The crackhead sees the car and bolts back out the door, and I never see her again. That night my truck got broken into. Can't for sure say it was the same woman, but I have her description to the cops anyway. One afternoon someone knocked at my back door. I thought it was the guy coming to read our meter, so I opened the door. Next thing I know, 2 huge guys pushed into the house, and one of them threw me up against the wall. Then they shoved me down on the couch. They told me they were Hell's Angels, and they were pissed because my BF was selling too much drugs, cutting into their profits. They kept calling me by my next door neighbor's name. We had suspected they were selling drugs. All of the people stopping by for less than 5 minutes made it pretty obvious. I just kept telling them I wasn't her. One of them searched the house, while the other kept me pinned to the couch. They started to realize they were in the wrong house, because they couldn't find anything where they were told it was. My neighbor's house is a single floor, with a basement. My house is a 4-level, back split. Then I showed them my mail, because it showed my name, and they knew they fucked up. They started telling me that they were after my neighbor's BF, because he raped their cousin. Which I knew was BS, but I didn't care, I just wanted them to leave. They robbed me of my cash, and left. I now have locks on my screen doors. I was asleep at home alone. When I turned over in bed, I casually opened my eyes a little whilst turning, and they were shut again just as quickly. In that split second, I could have sworn I had seen a man stood at the bottom of my bed. I laid still, awake with my eyes closed, trying not to act like I was awake and trying to listen for any sound in the room of someone breathing or moving. Couldn't hear anything. I was too scared to open my eyes and look, consoled myself that there wasn't any way someone could have gotten in without me hearing a window smash, and fell back asleep. When I got up in the morning, though, the front door was open. They didn't take anything and left no signs of being there. Was still very, very creepy though. I had a really bad sinus infection once. Couldn't clear my system out for a week or more. Decided to try generic Mucinex. I lost 3 days. I came to, standing in the middle of my studio apartment staring at the wall. I could barely remember anything. Just felt like I was a passenger in my body, kind of. I had worked all 3 of those days. Piloted public transport, cooked, translated stuff, used knives. All in this weird fugue state. When I came to, I spent a good hour at 3 in the morning trying to figure out what happened, what caused it. The only thing I had done differently was trying to clear up sinus infection with the meds. Poured those right in the toilet, and it never happened again. It was terrifying for me. The pure and utter confusion. Something very similar happened to me with NyQuil. There was about 2 days where I couldn't remember my name. I had my boyfriend at the time drive me to work, but they almost immediately sent me home, and I spent an hour wandering around the parking lot looking for the car that I did not drive. Turns out I can't take NyQuil. My aunt hallucinated that she spent the afternoon at Walden with Henry David Thoreau after taking a particular cold medicine. When I was 9, I was staying home alone. It was early morning. I had just gotten out of the shower and brushed my teeth. I put on my favorite outfit, set up a little area in the living room with my drink and a snack, and turned on the TV to watch. The phone rang. I went across the house to answer. The voice on the other end was familiar and very comforting. He asked about my day so far and made small talk. After a minute or so he said, "I like your outfit. Is pink your favorite color?" I replied, "Oh, thank you. No, it isn't. What were you planning on watching on TV?" It took me a few seconds to understand what was happening, as I was only 9 and very naive. The voice on the other end of the phone changed. It became deep and raspy and horrific. The voice then proceeded to describe my rape and murder in graphic detail. I went numb. My skin felt as if it were on fire. My heart was racing. I had never been more terrified in my entire life. I slammed the phone down and called my mom at work. I tried to explain what had happened, and I'm sure I wasn't making much sense. She got onto me for answering the phone and told me to go back about my day. I remember trying to explain that he was watching me. He told me what I had been doing. He told me what I was wearing. I mentioned that I was going to call 911 because I needed help. That isn't necessary. I'm not coming home. Just don't answer the phone and go watch TV. I hung up. I was confused. I was scared. I could feel eyes on me. I pulled the curtains closed. I raced around the house and was torn between doing what I felt was right and doing what I had been told by my mother. This whole time the phone was ringing. The second it would stop, it would start again. The sound of the phone ringing would pulse through my tiny body like electricity and practically paralyze me. I was frozen and on fire at the same time. I waited for a pause in ringing and called 911. I'm home by myself and I'm 9 and someone is watching me and he is going to kill me. She tried to keep me calm. She told me she would send help. I remember standing there, listening to this kind voice trying to help me, but I could feel every horror movie scenario playing out behind me. Was he creeping up behind me with a knife? Was he going to shoot me through a window? Was he going to throw a rock through the glass and open the door? I couldn't breathe. I couldn't feel my body, but I was also overly aware of my skin. In a moment of panic, I set off the alarm to the house and ran outside. I remember this sense of relief, but also this overwhelming feeling of having a separation in my reality. The house felt small and dark and dangerous and cold. Outside felt open, safe and warm. I could hear lawnmowers, birds chirping. It was a beautiful break from the bone-chilling feeling of the phone. It was like I was watching a movie and I could see myself experiencing both of these environments at the same time. A neighbor was pushing his child in a swing. He was concerned. He let me stand next to him and he protected me. I could hear the sirens, the blaring sound getting louder as they grew closer. It felt like it took an eternity, but the police arrived. He walked over to me and asked me what happened. I did my best to explain, but so many of the words the voice on the phone used were embarrassing. I couldn't bring myself to say such adult words to a police officer. His other words were bone-chilling. I couldn't say those either. I can still hear my young voice repeating he was watching me. He said he's going to kill me. Not long after, my mom's car pulled into the driveway. She, for some reason, decided to come home. She didn't look for me or come speak to me. She calmly got out and walked over to a police officer. I was standing in the doorway from the house to the garage, facing the driveway. I could see my mom, the police officer. I was watching, trying to understand, trying to figure out what was happening. And then I saw it. Her laughter. She was laughing. My face was swollen from tears. My heart was still racing. My skin was on fire. And my mom was laughing? I slowly crept closer and overheard, "I'm so sorry about this. She just got scared being home alone and overreacted. What is happening? What did I do wrong? Did I imagine this? Was this a dream? Should I not have called 911? Did I overreact?" My memory of what happened after that is hazy. I remember refusing to stay home alone, the sound of the phone ringing rippling through my body. It wasn't something I liked discussing. I refused to repeat what had been said to me by the voice on the phone. My mom decided she knew who did it. She didn't even know the details. There was no investigation. No one was questioned. She told me it was a boy my age who lived across the street. I knew it was impossible. And no matter how much I protested, I was always told it was him. Many years later, after I was an adult with children, we were at Christmas. Everyone was in the living room and I had gone into a back bedroom to change a diaper. As I was walking out of the room and back into the living room, I could hear my mom laughing, her voice as if she had been telling a joke. The faces of everyone in the room told a different story. Discomfort, anguish, shock, fear. Yet, she was still laughing. It felt as if I was walking in slow motion. One of my older children stopped me from entering the living room and sort of pushed me back into the room I had just come out of. She just told the story of you being home alone and the man threatening to kill you. She told it like it was a joke, like a funny story from your childhood. I never learned who it had really been. I deal with my fear of ringing phones and phone conversations on a daily basis. I was home from university for the summer and didn't have a job, so was home alone whilst everyone was at work. I live in a small village on a quiet street, so it was completely normal to have all the windows and doors open during the day. Late on in the afternoon I get a call from my dad. I'm around the corner but struggling to get into the street. I'll explain when I'm home but lock all the doors, close the windows and go upstairs. This was obviously strange. We don't live in a bad area and my dad's sense of humor isn't that mean, but the tone in his voice made me do it without hesitation. Everything closed and locked and upstairs I go. A few minutes later I get a second call from my dad. Some police are going to be going through the side gate into the back garden to check the shed. I'll be home soon. Again, I was terrified but knew to just ask later. Stayed upstairs but did see armed police checking the back garden. When my dad finally got home I obviously asked what had happened. Turns out some 16-year-old kid on our street had taken some legal highs, stabbed a neighbor then did a runner. Absolutely terrifying, but a sad part is they found him at night time because he is scared of the dark and came out of hiding. I was home alone on Christmas Eve. My parents had gone out to grab some last-minute things. I was about 6 or so, and was just playing with my toys in my room when I heard heavy feet walking around. I remember sneaking out of my room and peeking around the corner to see a large figure with shiny black boots walking around. I thought it was Santa, and I was awake, so I panicked internally. I snuck back to my room, put my toys away, and then I went to bed. I found out when I was 16 that it wasn't my parents trying to convince me that Santa was real, and that they had no idea what I was talking about. A guy had broken into our house, but he thought no one was home and thankfully didn't look around too much. When I was maybe 13 or 14, I was home alone. My parents were at a big dinner with some friends and coworkers, and my older bro went to hang out with some friends for a while. About an hour after he left, someone rang our doorbell. I knew better than to answer or to go see who was there, and suddenly the person at the door and yanking on the handle and stuff, trying to break in. I freaked out and grabbed the phone to call my brother, kind of hoping it was just him playing a prank, but it wasn't. He told me to call 911 and that he and his friends were on their way over. So I called 911, and as I was on the phone with the operator, I could hear the burglars moving around the house to the windows outside the room I was in. I was right in the open and knew they were going to see me, so I told the 911 operator that I needed to hide and told her where I was going to hide before dropping the phone. This was in the 90s and it was not a cordless phone, so, yeah, and running to hide. I ended up hiding in the guest room closet until the police arrived. My brother arrived a few seconds after and called our parents while I talked to the police. There were smudges of boot prints on our front door and they found at least 2 sets of tracks circling the house in the snow. I was too scared to be alone for at least a month afterwards. Seared into my mind is something that happened back in 2007. I was in middle school and was totally addicted to Modern Warfare. I would spend hours on that game long into the night. One Friday night at 2 a.m., I was the only one left awake in my home. It was totally dark because everyone was asleep. I couldn't hear anything because I was talking online with my friends on my new Turtle Beach headset with noise canceling. However, my expensive headset couldn't drown out the sound of my front door of my home being beaten from the outside. I heard this loud thud after loud thud and banging into my door. Bang 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 scratch. I ripped at my headset to make sure it wasn't coming from my TV. It wasn't. I quickly put my headset back on to let my friends to call the police if I didn't come back to the headset in 5 minutes. I remember thinking to myself I just felt like I was with my friends, but now they felt so far. I army crawled under the window to the front door so I wouldn't be spotted by whatever was outside. I grabbed the biggest knife in the kitchen. Then I stood there waiting on the other side of the door. Again bang 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 scratch, and this time it was followed by a screeching voice. Open the door. Open the door. Help me. They're almost here. Open the effing door. They've taken over. I didn't open it. I couldn't. I didn't want to. The next day I found out something very sad about the night prior. My family got a phone call from the son of the elderly couple living across the street. The son said he was staying over at his parents' house to assist them as they were getting too old to live on their own. In their 90s, I think he was a World War II vet. In the middle of the night the wife got up to use the bathroom and saw the son eating cereal and watching TV. She freaked out because she was suffering from Alzheimer's disease. She didn't recognize her own son. Since she thought it was a home invasion, she ran across the street for help. I went from feeling terrified to horrible. Not me, but my brother's friend. When we were teenagers, this kid was at our house playing video games late at night with my brother. He came downstairs to get a drink from the fridge and looked out the window. In our childhood house we had 3 huge windows that looked out into the yard, which was surrounded by miles of woods. Apparently, he looked out those windows into the dark and saw a woman at the top step outside our screened-in porch, trying to get in. Mind you, this was at about 1 or 2 a.m. According to his story, the woman stared at him and then slowly backed away and ran into the woods. This kid was known for joking around, but he woke my dad up in tears and he was shaking. It scared the shit out of me as a kid and still creeps me out now. I fully believe in ghosts, and my house seems to have something in it. I think the most terrifying thing that's happened was about 3 a.m. I'm woken up by a heavy dragging sound in my living room. The door to my room and right next to the front door in my living room. It sounded like someone just horrible dragging their feet back and forth across the carpet, and I could see the shadow going back and forth under the door because I always keep a lamp on in the living room. I opened the door and nothing was there. I closed and locked it and it continued again. It finally stopped after about an hour. There's not anything I could really do, so I just kept the door locked and stayed in the bed. Other things that have happened are I've woken up in the morning to all my cabinets open in my kitchen and all of my dishes, pots and pans were stacked smallest the largest on my counters. There's been multiple occasions of strong sense of baby powder and baby powder being sprinkled on my bathroom floor. I don't have any baby powder at all. I've also distinctly heard whispering conversations in my living room at night that stop when I investigate and continue when I leave, and occasionally in the room next to me something will knock on the wall that's next to my bed. The one that actually bothers me the most, and still happens to me every single day, is every time I stand at the oven and cook dinner, something tugs the back of shirt down. Every day. I've even worn multiple different shirts in different styles to make sure it wasn't just me being crazy. It's even skin right shirts. At this point I say, what do you want? Please stop. I'm just hungry and you're freaking me out. I was once home alone during the holidays when I was 17 as I was working. My parents and siblings were approx 200 miles away. It was about 2 a.m. and I had just turned all the downstairs lights off and nipped into the downstairs bathroom before heading off to bed. While I was in the toilet I heard footsteps in the room next door. I was frozen and managed to scream, "Dad? Help?" I then heard what I thought was a glass smash. I walked around but didn't see anything out of place, no smashed glass or anything strange. I thought maybe I'm going mad. I just couldn't get over there was no smashed glass, so I went to bed as normal. When I woke up in the morning the downstairs window was wide open. Couldn't have been left by accident, it was snowing. I rang my mom in floods of tears. The police came straight away and they were really great. It was clear that the window had been popped open and what I thought was broken glass is actually the shell we have below the window, sounds like that when you jump on it. They took prints, but they were pretty clear they didn't think it would go anywhere. There had been a spate of robberies in the area. A week later the police came back and they looked so stone-faced and a bit shell-shocked. They asked if they could look around the garden and they basically found a bush hollowed out with cigarette butts and beer cans. They basically said that this guy is a known peeping Tom, but they've been worried for a while that he was going to escalate into sexual assault as they suspected him in a few cases. They suspected that he had known I was home alone and waited until I turned off the lights and was 100% alone before breaking in, and that when I called out and mentioned my dad, he freaked out and left. As I hadn't seen the guy and that he could just say his prints were on the window from something else, my case never went any further. 2 years later, he was jailed for breaking into a woman's home, raping and murdering her. Sleep well, everyone. If you guys like this video, please drop a like and subscribe, and also check out my Instagram account Scary Time that is linked in the description below. And as always, stay scary.